Hello there, my name is Sebastián Gioseffi and I'm an indie developer from Buenos Aires, Argentina. If you know any of the games I work on, it might be a game called Okhlos about an angry mob of ancient Greeks. But today I wanted to tell you a little bit about my experience and about being a game developer in Argentina in general. So, to start with a little context about the country, since probably most people don't know much about Argentina. We are a former Spanish colony, so we speak Spanish. We are in the southernmost part of this American continent. We've had a pretty rocky history. In particular, in the 20th century, we've had lots of very serious economic crises and military coups and governments. Ending with the most brutal one at the end of the 1970s and early 80s, which was when I was born, in 83. By the time I was 6, I had already lived my first major economic crisis, a hyperinflation one, which was, I think, with up to 3,000% increase a year of inflation, which I didn't understand much at the time. I was 6, but I knew there were bills with lots of zeros in it. And in 2001, we had another major economic crisis with poverty going up to 50%, banks seizing people's money, riots in the streets, 5 different presidents in less than 2 weeks. It was a pretty big thing. And at the time, I was coming out of high school, so I understood a little bit more, but that was the context when I started to think about what I would do for a living. At the time, I thought what I thought was a safe choice, and I started studying software engineering. We had really good schools, public universities where you can study engineering here, so that's what I did. I didn't know what I was going to focus on at the time. Going to be like banking, databases, or web, until 2003, when in my university, a group of people that eventually went up to become the Argentinian Game Developers Association put together 2 days of talks where they shared their experiences, the projects they were working on, and that changed everything for me, because I had always loved games. I kind of dabbled a little bit about making games, like with level editors and mods and stuff like that, but I really never considered it a possibility until that moment, until actually meeting people that did that for a living. And that's when I decided that was also what I wanted to do. I didn't just jump right into it, because for one part there were not that many job opportunities at the instance, and also I wanted to focus on getting my degree first, so I got a part-time job at a traditional software company and did that for a couple of years until 2006, when I finally got my degree. I just went with my diploma and said I want to go make games now. And by that time, partly because of this crisis I was telling you about, the country was a pretty good place for foreign companies to come here and basically get cheap labor. Our currency had been devaluated a lot. And one of the companies that did that was Gameloft, the big mobile game developer from France, the sister company to Ubisoft. They opened a studio here and they were expanding. And that's where I got my first job making games. I started porting games from one mobile device to another, but they had also opened an area where they developed their own new original games, and eventually got into that area, and it was really great experience, just seeing a game made from scratch, and also kind of like reliving the game's history in the mobile way, starting with sprites, then 3D, then shaders. But after a couple of years, the company decided that it was getting too expensive development here. Like the country in general was bouncing back from the crisis and growing and getting a bit more expensive, and they decided to move the work elsewhere. So I was out of a job. Luckily, by that time, in 2000, I think it was 10, there was a company here in Argentina called Metro Games. It was a local company. They made Facebook games, social games, and they had a couple of hits on Facebook, and they were growing a lot. They were looking to create a new game design department from scratch. I was always very interested in game design. I was a programmer, but I always thought that programming was just what you had to learn to make games. So When I saw that opportunity, I applied and I got a position there. And again, I learned a lot just by seeing the company grow and also the game design department grow. And we got to design our own games, but just as we were going to release our first batch of games we designed on our own, the company crashed. What had happened is that they were losing money, but they didn't want to say anything because they wanted to sell the company, so it just went on with business as usual. It was too late, and it crashed, and they just told people we're not going to pay you. It was pretty nasty. And I was out of a job again. Meanwhile, 1 year before that, 2011, a couple of former Metro Games employees had put together their own studio, a very two-people team called Coffee Power Machine, and they released a mobile game in 2012, which sadly didn't go very well, so the programmer left. And then Roque, who was the artist in that two-people team, asked me if I wanted to join him to become part of Coffee Power Machine. And I was out of a job, and I really liked what they had done so far, both Roque and Diego with their mobile game. I was really interested in the idea of going like full indie, so I jumped right in. We first tried to revive this game called Gravity Fleet. It was really good, fun, good looking, interesting, but it didn't work. So eventually we started working on a new game, that's what would become Okhlos. One of the things I think we did right was kind of choosing what kind of game to make. We thought about that a lot, and I think we found a very nice sweet spot that makes like the things we wanted to do, the things we could do, and the things we're good at, and what was viable at the time. But that is not to say that the development was easy. For once, we didn't have any core mechanics decided at first, so we just had a theme and we had to explore different mechanics, trying to find something different but fun that would fit the theme, and that took us a long time. And also we were broke. Our first game didn't make any money, so we had to find money elsewhere. We tried like doing some contract work, making games for clients, and we did that for a while, but we found out that it took us like too much of our time. We really couldn't devote any time to make Okhlos if we did that. So we had to find alternate sources. We spent quite a lot of time on that until 2014. We finally found some investors that were willing to put their faith and their money with us, and that enabled us to work full time and get a really good looking prototype, a working build that was fun, good looking, and that was a really big break for us. And the second big break came in 2015 when we took the game to the big festival in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We took part in the contest and we won the Best Gameplay Award, so yay. And also we met a lot of really cool people, including some folks from Devolver Digital, the publisher, with whom we hit it off. We had a really good vibe and they liked the game, so they offered to publish it, and we did. And with those things, we kept on working and finally managed to release the game on 2016. Like Devolver really pushed it, they did a full marketing campaign, they took it around the world, they did interesting togas, everything, they were great. And the game launched, and it was okay. It wouldn't get rich, but it wasn't a flop either. So we just kept on working on the game for several more months and trying to improve it, make it as best as possible, making update after update, until finally at the start of 2017 we released our last major update. Was the Omega update, which coincided with the release on Humble Bundle and also the release of the Chinese translation. And all those things combined made that the game had like a second launch. At least you can see here in the graphic, I think. Like the revenue was as big, even a little bit more even, than the original launch, which was thought was not possible. We thought it was going to be all downhill, but we managed to get that, which was great. And since then, it has continued to generate a very stable revenue with these little spikes on every sale, especially on the Devolver sales. So that was really good. We're really happy with that. And the moment I decided to take some time away, to take a year off to work on some personal projects and work on prototypes and ideas and stuff like that. So I did. And one of those prototypes is the game I'm working on right now. In late 2017, I met with another friend, Leandro Giorni from a colleague from Gameloft. We started working one of those ideas, and it's what has become now what we call the Muchin Monolith, a game about a farmer that runs into this weird, cute giant stonehead that asks the farmer for lots of things and to help it fight some weird monsters. It's kind of a mixture of tower defense and action, and it's been growing steadily from just a small idea to something much larger now. It's kind of still unannounced. We are not have any media or anything. We're just working on it. But we took it to a local game festival this year, and we won the Best Original Idea award. So yeah. And that's basically my path until today. But I wanted to take a few more minutes to tell you about the games industry in Argentina in general in these years. First, I want to go back to 2003, show you this article. What it says is basically that they're predicting that 2004, the following year, is going to be the big boom for games in Argentina. Industry is going to explode, let's say. And as you can probably guess from some of the things, some glimpses of what I've been telling you, that didn't happen. Of the companies that were in 2003, when I first realized there were people making games here, I think only one of those companies or studios are still alive today. Lots of other companies have come and gone in these years, so it's been tough. But it's not to say that the industry has not grown. No, far from it. It's now those group of people that put together the talk, the Argentinian Developers Association, are more than 30, 40 companies and lots of individuals more. There are other organizations like group developers now. There are now places where you can study game development, something that 2003 was unheard of. There are big companies from Argentina making games, a very big social games company, and I think it is a consulting firm that also takes contract work from EA. So industry is growing, but not only that, lots of titles have been released from companies and indies. Most of them didn't do too well, but we've had a few hits, like Forager last year by Hopro, which is great. Right now we have a few very promising titles that could become the next great Argentinian hit, so keep an eye out for those. And aside from that, the whole video games scene in Argentina has grown a lot, which is very, very great, very interesting, like alt-control games that maybe are not commercial games, but have really rocked like very, very different game festivals around the world. And we have also a growing art game scene and experimental game scene. We have had sites and blogs that have been elevating the discourse about games here in Argentina. And something, again, very, very interesting that happened a few years ago when we had an abortion debate here about the new abortion law. Some game developers used the medium as a way of political activism, which was something that was never seen before. So it's very interesting and something that just keeps growing and growing, and it's happening more and more. So no, it wasn't a boom. It wasn't as the article said, but the video games in Argentina, the scene has grown definitely. Not at a steady pace. It was more like ups and downs. But it's been tough. I think if you ask anyone here how it's like to make games, I think one of the keywords that pops up a lot is uncertainty. Like uncertainty is something maybe that defines making games in a country like Argentina. You don't know what's going to happen. It's really hard to make plans. It's really hard to project things in the future. But at the same time, it's something that we have to learn the hard way to adapt, to make changes easily and evolve with the situation and be resilient. Speaking about that, but the country in general, we are in the middle of a huge economic crisis right now that was only made worse by the pandemic, like much worse. So it's really hard to know what's going to happen here, but I think we're just going to keep making games. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to see what comes out of the video game scene here in Argentina. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you especially to everyone at Pathfindings, and particularly Gwen Foster for the opportunity, and everyone who listened, and everyone is interested in games from the Global South. Thank you.